call to order.
Okay, it is recording.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting this evening to order and begin with roll call.
All right, Mark Husbands,
Present.
Christine Adams,
Present.
Kate Truesdell,
Here, present.
Jim Woodward,
Here.
Stephen Young.
Here.
Councilmember Stone, we do not have present at this time. Gary Manfrey.
Present.
Excused, we have Karen Miller. And staff, we have Christina Underhill.
Here.
And Dave Lee. And myself, Debbie Severa. All right, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'd like to move to last month's meetings from April 23rd. Do we have any comments or corrections on the meeting minutes?
I'll move the meeting minutes of April 23rd as written.
I'll second.
All those in favor of accepting the minutes as written, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting minutes are moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we'll move to public comment. I know we have several members of the public that have joined us. And I believe that it's primarily focused on the question of Emerson Park. This will be an opportunity for the public to address the commission with the expectation that comments are provided in a respectful manner. The commissioners may ask questions for clarification, but there won't be dialogue or debate during this public comment. We've received a number of letters and social media posts, as well as comments received in the April meeting regarding Emerson Park. So what I'd like to do in the interest of efficiency and time is offer a brief summary of those letters and then open the floor for folks who might have additional ideas to add or haven't had a chance to provide comments in the past. All the letters that we've received so far are already published on the city website and are going to be part of a briefing by Director Underhill to the council. So rest assured this information has been received and recorded and forwarded on. For those who do wish to provide additional comment on top of the letters that we've already received to add to the record, we ask that you abide by a few basic rules for this online platform. First, please use the raise hand function and you'll be identified in the order that you raise your hand. When called on, which will be by a portion of your email or how you're identified on the online platform, please identify yourself with your first and last name and let us know if you're an Englewood resident. And finally, please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. And we'll try to give you a 1 minute warning before the 3 minutes are up. So as I mentioned, we received a number of letters, social media posts, and public comments from last month about Emerson Park. And so I thought it'd be useful just to summarize what we've heard so far, very general summary, not getting into all the details, but sort of the capstone issues. First, a group of neighbors is recommending that Emerson Park be added to the inventory of Englewood parks in which off-leash dog use is permitted. In support of this change, neighbors are citing support from other neighbors based on a door knocking effort and other informal discussion with neighbors, success over the years in maintaining good conditions in the park regarding litter and dog waste, and various quality of life benefits from interaction with other neighbors using the park for off-leash purposes, and of course the exercising of dogs and so on. In addition, some of the commenters also objected to the recent enforcement efforts there, including some of the enforcement methods like ticketing. So with that as a brief summary of what we've heard through last month's comments, letters, and social media posts, I'd like to open up the meeting to additional public comment. Again, please use the raise your hand function and we'll try to get to you in order. So Debbie, I see one hand raised.
Debbie, you're on mute.
Yeah, Debbie, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm telling all you guys to mute yourself. And then, okay, so we have phone number ending in 6622. If you will identify yourself with your first and last name. And if you are
Hello,
resident
everybody.
or non. Okay.
My name is Christian Mills, Donald Christian Mills. I'm an Inglewood resident of, owned the home at 2952 South Ogden Street for about 20 years now. Prior to that, I lived down at south of 285, so I've called Inglewood home for pushing 30 years now. And thank you for entertaining this. Thanks for giving us a venue and a voice. I've been going to Emerson Park for most of those 20 years, and it's not an exaggeration to say that I've been going there for probably at least 5 days a week. A couple of different dogs, those of you that are pet owners, unfortunately, we outlive them. But it's become so much more than that, and that's why I think you see this passionate response. It really is a place for this neighborhood to get together. You know, I could give you a myriad of examples that are positive, and I'm sure that you all hear just as many, you know, that are negative. This is really a community for us to build and to create a sense of community, and those were what I was trying to express in the letter that I wrote. There are intangibles that come with us talking to each other that go beyond just the people at the park. You know, Officer Lewis and I, you know, tried to be a go-between, you know, for him whenever possible, and to say, this is what we want. What we want is, you know, some recognition of off-leash hours in the morning and the afternoon, similar to the Jason Park situation. And we want to be able to give something back in return. We're not going to ask for just something and you know, not have reciprocity. So that would be a person to contact if there are issues at the park, a continued presence, and it's almost, you know, religious for us to pick up dog waste there, you know, on an every other week basis. I'd argue it's one of the cleaner parks that's out there. We also serve as another set of eyes on the park for people that maybe are up to activities that are less than you know, what the neighbors in that area would like to see. So
1 minute remaining.
Sure. Thanks for the venue. We do appreciate it. This is something that we take very seriously, and you know, as a long-time member and living one street over on the same block as the park, I can tell you that this is part of life, of living, and it's part of the quality of life of owning a home this close to one of the gems of Inglewood. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Christian Mills and Tucker. You can't see him now. Thank you.
Okay, we do not have anyone else that has raised their hand to speak.
Okay. Anyone else? Here we have Charles Parker.
Yeah, hi, I'm Charles Parker, and I'm the guy who's lived here for 45 years, and I've been going to Emerson Park all those years with dogs, and I have met all the neighbors in the area because of that park, and otherwise I probably would not have formed such a community with them as I have. That park is just, you know, it's part of our community. It's a necessary part of our community, I feel. It brings people together. And I'm one of the people who went around and talked to people trying to get signatures for petitions. And most everybody that I talked to was in favor of making this an off-leash dog park for certain hours of the day. I did run into a few people that weren't interested in it, and that's fine. But the majority of the 200 plus signatures that we got were very positive, and people basically were saying it's about time. thanks for doing this. And, you know, I hope something comes of this. So, you know, and that's just walking around in the vicinity here and probably like a, you know, 10 or 15 block radius. And so that's all. And I just, you know, I thank you too. I second what Christian has said, and I appreciate your time and letting us have this opportunity to have our voices heard. So that's pretty much it. I hope, you know, I hope we can all come to some reasonable agreement to make this work for everybody. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Charles?
Sure.
Is that okay, Mark? Does that?
Yes.
Okay. Charles, where do you live? I didn't hear what street you live on.
I'm on Clarkson Street. I'm on Clarkson Circle, which is just basically, I don't know, a block and a half away from the park.
Right, north of it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have anyone else who'd like to submit a comment on this topic? Okay, well, if we don't, then we can move on with the agenda. I appreciate everyone's participation and the comments you submitted. And as I mentioned, they've already been published on the website and they will be shared with council. So thank you again for participating in this opportunity to provide public input. And you're free to stay on the meeting for the rest of the agenda if you're interested, or if you would like to drop off, you may do that too. So thanks again. With that, I think we can move to new business, which is updates on opening rec and athletic facilities, including Pirates Cove, which I know is of major interest.
To get off mute. Okay, so yeah, obviously we're anxious to get everything reopened in Inglewood, but we have to be cautious and patient as we're not really able to reopen yet based off state orders. The one thing that we do have open, obviously, is our golf course, Broken Tee. On May 11th, they started allowing people to rent golf carts again and the handheld carts, the push carts. And so we're only allowing one rider per cart, and obviously we're disinfecting them heavily when they get returned. So from the closure standpoint, it's been a lot of extra work for the golf course to ensure to stay open, just to keep everything clean. We've had some recreation staff and library staff too that have gone over to help out during the other closures with the golf course, since that was the one amenity we were able to open first. And we were trying to keep staffing levels as low as possible, but ultimately people were calling in, not wanting to pick up shifts and things, so we had to move some people around. The rec center, the Inglewood Recreation Center, to be determined on when we are reopening that. Gyms have been told to stay closed, and the rec center is seen as a gym. So we're waiting on that. Our summer camps will most likely be impacted if we're able to have them this year. They were held at the schools, and the schools have said we are unable to use their facility this summer, which is understandable. But we're working on getting the licensing moved from the school over to the recreation center, and we have not heard back, and that was submitted about 2 weeks ago, maybe a little longer than that. So we're hoping to hear back so we can move forward on summer programming if we're able to. The Farm and Train and Pirates Cove. Farm and Train is seen as an amusement park, which has been recommended to stay closed, and obviously Pirates Cove is a pool, so that's also recommended to stay closed. We have a tentative opening date of June 7th. That's a Sunday. We wanted to open on a Sunday to hopefully keep the crowds down and ease back into being open. That's, again, to be determined based off of state orders. Those may be staying closed longer depending on what we find out at the end of this month. Our fields for practices, we would like to reopen those on June 1st, and that plan so far is moving forward unless we hear something different. And again, that's only for practices. And hopefully by July, we'll be open back up for games. But as we all know, there's so many uncertainties moving through this situation. We just can't give a definitive answer yet. And then Mali is an area that, or a location that we have no reopening date set for. Obviously, that's our vulnerable population, and that may stay closed to the summer. We don't know yet. Hopefully not. But again, our main focus is the safety of our patrons, and then obviously our staff members too. River Run Trailhead and the surf area is opening. Dave, is that opening now? Is that what we decided? The water's starting to flow pretty good.
It opened last week, but unfortunately the flows coming out of Chatfield have been dialed down. So I don't believe there's going to be many people out there for the near future anyway, until we get more snow melt in release.
Which is probably okay in the situation that we're in, that it's not attracting people down there. And then, pavilions. We were going to reopen those this weekend, but based off of state orders, and we could categorize those as picnic shelters, so that the pavilions will stay shut down for a while longer, probably until June, unless something changes. So doom and gloom for us. We haven't reopened much other than golf. We hope to reopen everything soon, but we're being patient through this to ensure it's safe.
Okay, do we have any questions on this agenda item?
I have a question. And maybe, Christina, maybe you mentioned it, but playground equipment?
That is closed.
When would that be?
They're remaining closed. The last order that was sent out was to remain closed until further notice. Playgrounds scare me a little bit because there's so many touch points. We know how clean little kids are, or not. I'm hoping they'll open soon. Maybe as the temperatures warm up, we can get a little bit more confident in our reopening of the playgrounds. But for now, they're closed, at least until the end of the month when we get new direction from the state.
If I can add to that too, Christina, we have caution tape around all of the playgrounds. Unfortunately, it disappears off of the playgrounds at least weekly, if not sooner. The same thing with the skate park. We've tried to close that with caution tape. That doesn't work. We've closed it with snow fencing, and they tear that down as well. But I continue to try to have the guys put that back up and add signage. So at least if it gets torn down, you know that there's a sign there and you shouldn't be in there.
Has that been classified as ticketable? If you guys see something like that, or is it kind of just one of these things where it's so quickly come around that we just put it up and cross our fingers?
That certainly would be up to the police department on whether they decide or want to even issue a ticket.
Okay.
There was something on Nextdoor this week about Bates Logan, some kids on bike removing all the tape on playground equipment and then leaving.
Yes, I saw that on Nextdoor. I responded that the playgrounds are closed. I checked with park staff and they put the caution tape back up today.
Great.
Okay, any other questions on this agenda topic? If not, then we can move on to budget.
Yeah, exciting time. We're starting the budget. It's only May. We just started in January. So we will be taking our proposed draft budget to council on May 26th, so just after Memorial Day. As a department, we're really not asking for that much due to the times that we're in right now. I don't think we'll get much that we asked for, but we're trying to keep our asks low and reasonable. I'll just give some highlights of things like minimum wage. We're asking for like $12,000 for minimum wage to bring some of our employees up a little bit. So it's little stuff like that. The big thing is a park ranger. We put the proposal together to bring on a park ranger, and this would be in addition to code. In fact, we've talked about them being based out of our parks department versus police or whatever. But really the thought behind that is to assist with this off-leash dog issues and potentially move down the path of the licensing And it will kind of depend what this role of the individual will be if the position is accepted and approved. Whether we continue as is, which is off-leash program, or it's changed up and now they're enforcing and educating new rules. So that's really what that position will be doing, in addition to other just general monitoring of our parks. So that's kind of a big new position for us that we'll be asking for. Our annual holiday lighting ask for Broadway, flower pots on Broadway, we're asking for funding for those again, keep those nice. And then the big one too for parks, and I think this is kind of cool, there's a software program out there that can monitor your plant health and your tree health. And I think with the emerald ash borer and some of the issues that parks face with the reduction in pesticide usage and other things, this program really could benefit our parks to be more proactive and catch issues with our plant health prior to it really becoming a big issue. So it could save us quite a bit of money in the long run. And that software program is about $30,000, but honestly, it could save us about that in a year if we're able to be proactive and maybe not overtreat too. There might be some things that we're overdoing that we don't need to, we can cut back, and the software can help us with that. So that's an exciting new program. And then we'll be presenting our CIP budget too. They've already seen it. I don't know if anybody watched the council meeting or listened to it on Monday night, but we presented our capital to them and what we're proposing for next year. As you may know, there's a couple funds in the parks and recreation side that can only be utilized for parks and recreation. So, and we do have funding for those. So unless they disagree completely, they typically don't change the request in those. The conservation trust and the open space lines. The one that's somewhat up in the air, we're waiting to find out if our emerald ash borer funding, which we request $50,000 annually for, if that will continue. The Planning and Zoning Commission had recommended it drop to $25,000, which we're a little nervous about because we know when it does hit, and I think we just learned it's in Lone Tree now, Dave. They found some emerald ash borer there. Is that correct?
Collins. It was
Fort Collins, sorry.
Fort Collins.
So it's getting closer, and I think to save money, you honestly have to be proactive in these situations, either treating trees or removing trees as quick as possible to stay ahead. And we have just under 400 ash trees within our park system. So $50,000 won't cover it, but if we have $50,000 for the next 4 to 5 years, we might be okay and be able to stay ahead of it. So that's what we are looking at for capital. I think I covered just about everything. Again, we're not going after a ton for next year. We could dream big and go big, but it's the funding's not going to be there. We already know as Denver and others are experiencing furloughs and other challenges. We're not in Inglewood yet. We haven't got to that point, but we're just being very cautious as a department. Oh, the other big thing is the bond, the parks bond. That was voted to not move forward with it this year, which I don't completely disagree with. We all selfishly would love to make our parks beautiful and renovate them all now, but with our given economic status, I don't think putting more burden on our taxpayers makes sense in 2020 or 2021. So we have the bond that will sunset in 2023. Hopefully that's great timing to look at pursuing a new bond to do a lot of the improvements that we're all hoping to do in the future.
Question.
Yes.
The ash borer, the 50,000, that was for parks only, not for residents.
That is correct.
Is there any program for residents?
I'll let Dave take that one. I'm not sure.
We currently don't have any kind of a program set up for residents. I did include that in a report that I just gave to Christina. That's something that I think needs to be brought up to council, and they need to make a decision on it. Years ago, we had a community forestry program which gave up to a $300 subsidy to any Inglewood citizen for pruning, removal, and planting of new trees. That program got cut during one of the budget recessions and was never restored. That's something that I brought up in my report, in my management plan, and if council so chooses, they could allocate some money towards that, because I believe that once the bug starts killing a number of trees and these trees are left dead and standing, there's going to be a clamor from citizens asking their local government to help or do something about it.
Yeah, I just had the question asked of me today. It was kind of interesting. I didn't have any idea. So thank you.
I don't know what the city of Inglewood does. Perhaps you guys can educate me on if property owners aren't taking care of their trees, do they get liens or fines or anything like that from the city?
I can try to answer that a little bit. Unfortunately, Dave Lewis, our code enforcement supervisor, isn't with us tonight. He could best answer that. I think under the municipal ordinances and codes, the city can do that. I think in the past, they've been somewhat hesitant, only in extreme cases of issuing something like that. But that also is something that could be brought forth in the future once there are a lot of dead ash trees.
Well, and I guess my my comment on that kind of goes the other way is, especially given the time we're in, we may have some low income residents who can't take care of their trees, who may be receiving summons. And so this is just another, this is just another lien or expense that they can't afford, as well as pruning their trees. And so that may be something from an equity perspective that we want to keep in mind if we start to see EAB here.
And that's why I put that forestry subsidy in the management plan. But again,
I love that.
In order to get funding, that's certainly a council choice.
Thanks.
I think that's a very good point, though, Christine, for, to council, for Dave to put in the report to council that, there are going to be more things. Mm-hmm. I know that the only time in the past that code used to enforce that was upon complaints. So if a neighbor or somebody was complaining about it, and as a council member, I did get complaints on that and would turn it over to the city manager, who would send it on to code. And next thing you would see is something happened there.
Yeah, in Denver, our experience has been that the majority of our ash trees are in very low income neighborhoods. And I care very deeply about making sure that those residents who already don't have the resources to take care of this historic asset that they were inherited aren't further burdened by enforcement. And so that may be something we need to think about down the road.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point. And it's definitely something I'll mention. I do have Dave's report now. I've been reviewing it, and I'll get it to our city manager and I'll make comment of that. I don't think that's a bad idea. Even if it were to take some of the funding, if it's 50,000 and we want to, if we don't use it one year, we want to keep rolling it, but it may be possible to use some of that, 5,000 or so, just kind of put aside for potential grant programs or something of that nature. So I do like that recommendation, and I'll mention that.
Thank you.
I had noticed the study session on the finances for the city last month, or not last month. It was last month for the prior month, for March. It was pretty impressive. I mean, Inglewood seems to have done much better than any other city that I had heard of. So hopefully that holds on.
You are correct. Yeah, we I think, as Maria Sabata, our finance director, mentioned, that we're more or less a flat line for last March to this March, which is actually impressive considering the situation that we are in, where other cities are seeing decline. One thing that Inglewood doesn't have is like a big mall or hospitality industry, the hotels. And so we're not getting hit from that side. And those are major industries, especially this time of year in the Denver metropolitan area. So Inglewood is lucky now, and fingers crossed that the trend continues. And so we don't see major cuts or hits, because unfortunately it takes a long time to recover when that does happen.
Okay, any other questions on budget? If not, we can move on to rec center capital improvements.
Yeah, so some positive of COVID, we've been able to complete quite a few large projects at the Inglewood Recreation Center. So we'll find something good to talk about related to COVID, but the pool decking that wasn't supposed to be completed until the fall is being done right now during our closure, so that's great. I mean, obviously we're not making any revenue with the center currently, and if we were to close in the fall, it'd be the same situation. So we're really happy that hopefully in the fall we won't have a closure, and maybe we can catch our revenue up a little bit with staying open. There were some issues with the tile in the lobby. It was starting to buckle. We had some flooring issues there, and that's been completely fixed now. That's been an ongoing issue for quite a while. And then our gymnasium was painted as well. It's more modern colors. So that was finished. So we had a meeting today. Oh, the ADA, there's gonna be some ADA parking upgrades with a ramp to add it into the ERC. And I think that starts next week. If it's not starting this week, it's starting next week. So again, we're able to accomplish some of these projects that weren't scheduled out until the fall now. And then we had a meeting today with a design firm regarding potential future upgrades and what we have in our capital budget. So we discussed the lobby area, moving the check-in area, possibly some repurposing some space from storage to actual offices, redoing the lobby restrooms. Those have been ongoing issues. And then replacing the front walkway lights. Allison, who's our senior coordinator over there, supervisor, she said that they're zip tied to the poles so they stay upright. So we need to fix that so it's a nice appearance going in. But we've been able to get a lot of the capital done for this year right now while we've been closed, which has been excellent.
If I can add to what Christina's already said, we're also putting a fire hydrant out on, what is that? Calumet on that side for safety reasons. For whatever reason, one was never installed when the rec center was built, and the ADA ramps and the fire hydrant are due to start next Monday, the 18th. The fire hydrant will take about 2.5 weeks to install.
And that's all we've got.
Okay. In that case, we can move to old business. First on the agenda is off-leash dog parks.
So Mark, I'll let you kind of talk through this one. Like we've heard comments, we received letters, we did a POCO survey, got quite a few responses back for that. A lot of people posted on Facebook. Hopefully everybody got a chance to review all of it and just kind of see what people are saying. It's actually kind of a good mix on both sides of the off-leash issues. So my goal, and I've told Mark this, is to continue moving decision-making forward. There are options that we could propose. I'd like to try to take this back to council in July if possible, so we can start making decisions and changes where necessary. We discussed, if we add Emerson, do you take another one away? Or there's a lot of issues around off-leash that many of you have been involved with for many years now. I'm fairly new to this, so you're all the experts on what you know regarding off-leash. And so from my perspective, it's time to rip off the Band-Aid and start moving towards solutions to make the changes with our off-leash dog program. We're not going to make everybody happy, we know that, on either side. But I think making the best educated decisions from the safety perspective, from park maintenance perspective, from our community. I get it. We all love our dogs and love to socialize them. And I agree, dog parks are necessary in communities and having that access. But I want to open it up to you, and Mark can run this part of just feedback from all the members of the commission. And I'll let you take it, Mark.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about these kind of a set of interrelated topics related to dogs and dog parks and off-leash parks and the policy and over the last, it's probably been a couple of years. I mean, it goes back certainly to the problems that we had a couple winters ago with turf damage at Jason Park. We were already talking about some of these things then. We've heard from a variety of different groups who have different points of view. And we ran that sort of task force for a little while. Kate ran it. It was mostly focused on trying to get Inglewood Unleashed kind of re-engaged and revitalized, and it seemed promising, but I think at this point maybe that's no longer a promising avenue. But I guess my thought is that maybe we can use that task force as a way of doing a little bit of focused work on better defining the problems, and which problems we're trying to solve, and coming up with some different solutions that we can put in front of the council. Because I agree that we can keep talking about how unusual it is that there's a city with an off-leash policy in this day and age, and I think we've all explored the problems associated with the off-leash policy. We've certainly heard plenty of folks that take advantage of the off-leash policy, that support it, and there's folks that are concerned about it. So I guess my only notion is that maybe we need to use that task force as a platform to draw something up on paper about what the position or positions of the commission members are.
I agree with that, Mark. I think that that's probably a big part of the next step to help Christina and the team out, is for us to decide what we really think as the commission and the task force we should do based on what we've learned. But then it kind of goes back to, it's so difficult. Like, what is the answer? What do we want to recommend? And what does it look like? One thing I kind of thought was interesting in the comments that were sent to us, someone mentioned maybe doing a summer program of trying Emerson as off leash. I don't know, that could be interesting. I kind of see two sides to it. We could see if maybe that helps disperse the off leash issues in other parks. I mean, Bates is right down the road. Maybe if everyone knew, they would go there instead. But then I also wonder how that group of neighborhoods would feel if all of a sudden there was a huge influx of lots of people coming to the dog park, and if then maybe their feelings would change. I don't know what you do exactly, but I think you're right. We should probably get the task force together to decide what we think.
So out of curiosity, if we were to test something for 3 months over the summer at Emerson, do you think the benefits would outweigh the risk, as far as, for instance, if the majority of the people that wrote the letters, for example, are the ones who go there anyway, are they going to then be upset September 1st, for example, if all of a sudden the signs go back up? Or are they going to just sort of continue going on? I mean, I kind of lean towards it's more beneficial than risky, only because if the opinions still change, if they go ask the same 200 people that signed their petition, hey, now you've had an influx of 3 times the amount of dogs over 3 months, are you still of the same opinion? And if they're still out cleaning it up and they're still okay with it, then to a certain degree, maybe that gives us a little bit more confidence that there's not going to be future complaints. But the trade-off with that is that you also, if people find out, for instance, north of Yale and Denver, that it's good for 3 months, and all of a sudden, maybe, I don't know how representative it'll be if all of a sudden all the Harvard Gulch crowd goes 3 blocks south, and then we don't know if those are actually Englewood residents or not.
And I almost, for me personally, I kind of think of it as both sides of those is what it is. You'd maybe be able to come out with an outcome like, this is what happens if we make them all off leash, or if we, it's like, it's working or it's not. It can maybe help to guide like the decision that we should finally make. Because I mean, I don't know, it's really hard. I understand people want the dog leash, off leash rules, but like, we're growing as a city, and it's getting more, people here. And I just don't know how sustainable it is for everything and everyone, even though, I mean, and then it's kind of hard too, because then I think, well, could we just say, okay, all the parks are no longer off leash, like there's no off leash dogs in Englewood, but people are still going to take their dogs to parks and let them off the leash. Like, that's just what they're going to do. So it's like, this sounds horrible, but like, how much of a battle do we want this to become? And then, because if we let it just become, no parks have off leash privileges, and then code enforcement would have to do that, but like enforce. But if Officer Lewis, like that's getting to him in a mental way, then we don't want to do that to him either. Like, it's just, it's really hard. And that's why I like the idea of this park ranger. I think that's a great idea for the budget. I was going to say that in my little comment at the end, because I think that could definitely help out with this. So I really like that idea.
Out of curiosity, was the capital expense significantly high to put in the signs that just allowed the morning and evening hours? I know that the expense was going to be high if you officially made like a canine corral at Emerson or at Bates Logan over by the, you know, the playground or whatever, but would it be a significant expense to just put in a sign or two at Emerson, or would they even be temporary signs? I guess I'm wondering what would it actually look like if you were to implement that from a cost standpoint?
It would be minimal cost
Okay.
from a cost standpoint to add a few signs. If memory serves me correct, we had those made in our traffic department, at least the first ones that were a little less fancy. And then the other thing that I wanted to add for all the commission members, a little bit of history on the 5 original off-leash parks. We did a year's pilot program where I had to write a report and make a recommendation down the road on whether we, council wanted to keep those 5 off-leash parks or not. And I will tell you, I do believe for the first year, people were on their best behavior. And then when it became permanent is when all the problems came. And I'm not saying that from, a stance of my own opinion. I'm just stating a fact that that's the way it was. It seemed in a year's time, the pilot program worked very well. And from there, it went downhill. So giving a 3-month pilot program, I don't believe you have a true indicator there.
Well, I think there's issues with the representativeness of Emerson as a park. I mean, it's different than many of the other parks. And I think that if we're going to pilot something, it needs to be, it's not just trying something out. It needs to have a particular objective related to a larger kind of, system-wide solution, right? But this is the kind of stuff that I think we need to focus the task force on, because we have, in these more open discussions, we talk about issues with the off-leash policy, we talk about enforcement problems, we talk about interesting ways of changing the parks that are included under the off-leash policy. We talk about places that we could build out more formal enclosed dog parks, and all these objectives get a little bit muddled. And I really think that the task force needs to figure out exactly what it is we're trying to accomplish. Are we addressing the off-leash? When we started off with this, a lot of it was focused on addressing problems that we knew were associated with the off-leash policy, and many of those were adjacent. Now, lots of other things have been brought in, I think, in the course of the discussion, but it becomes really challenging to kind of keep our thoughts about this stuff organized, in part because there's a lot of different dimensions to how we might, even define the problem. So anyway, I think that that's something that needs to be, kind of a first point of order for the task force is kind of distinguish among some of these different interrelated problems. And Debbie also mentioned, I see Charles has his hand raised, and I as a point of order, I'm not sure where we are in terms of
I think that's your call. I mean,
sure, let's hear what Charles has to say.
I have a couple of questions and a comment or two. And one of the comments is that I think that a test with Emerson Park for the 3 months or whatever would be a great way for us to all figure out what we need to do to go forward with this, if we do go forward in any way at all. And as far as the neighbors go, I think, over all these years that I've been going there, I think that we've all had a real reason to monitor what goes on at this park, with dogs that are out of control, or dogs that are aggressive, or people that aren't picking up their pet waste. We've been pretty on top of that, and I think we'd continue to do so. But I do agree that, you know, if that park is made at off-leash park for 3 months, there's probably going to be more people that show up there. And, you know, nobody knows what that's going to look like. And one of my questions is the decision for going forward with this, is this something that is up to the city council again, or is this up to Parks and Recreation, or is it a combination of everyone at this point to make a decision? And how would we as a community know what decisions are being made if there's no, I mean, we can always join meetings like this, but if there's no actual physical meetings that we can attend, would those decisions be put on like the Inglewood website or something?
Well, we are a board of city councils, and we make recommendations, and we would make a recommendation to city council.
Okay.
So, and they may not agree. They might.
But it's council that has the decision-making authority for questions like this, whereas we're just in review and recommendation business.
Okay. It seems like the last city council meeting that we all attended, there was a follow-up meeting after that, and it was put to the Parks and Recreation by the city council that it would be their decision. So I was a little confused about who was making what decisions, but
I think it was, as I recall it, what they said was take it back to Parks and Recreation Commission for recommendation.
Okay. Okay,
So,
well, thank you.
And Mr. Parker, this is Christine Underhill, the Parks and Rec Director. From the campaign side, so depending on what decisions are made with our off-leash program, it would be a whole media campaign that we'd be running with press releases. It would be in the Citizen and our guide showing what changes are being made. Facebook, Nextdoor. I mean, we do our best to get the word out there. And then obviously our code officers and park staff would be educating individuals as well. So when a decision is made, we do our best to get it out into the community as quickly as possible so people understand what the new rules may be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So we've got one more hand raised.
Yeah.
So why don't we field that and then get back to the question, I think, of how to move forward with the task force.
Okay, I've unmuted them.
Great,
Okay.
thank you. This is Christian Mills. I spoke earlier, right before Charles Parker did. And, you know, that was one part of the comments that I made was if this could be a trial thing, if we could look at something, you know, with a both and view versus an either or. And we have citizens that, I mean, this park is the people around it are passionate. So, you know, we can assign, you know, contact people or, you know, we've got a pool of people who are willing to put in the time and the effort to do it. I know, and Parker does as well, you know, over there in the evenings on Sunday with the pooper scooper picking up for other people. And we address when people don't do that. And that's not what we do here. But to formalize it, you know, you've got a group that are willing to be, you know, unpaid volunteers who are looking to make this work. And I was around when Bates Logan was an off-leash park and everybody from Denver came, and that was a mess. I wouldn't take my dog over there. I wouldn't let my kids play soccer on that field when 50 dogs are there. So I applaud you for taking this on because it's not going to be easy. But we are, you know, you have a resource, you know, and a couple of them are on the phone right now. So thank you.
I have a couple of questions, and from what I believe were the Facebook comments, I saw a lot of comments regarding Cushing Park as an alternative. And has anybody done any further checking with fences or what it would take to do something there where we had it in the master plan?
Yeah, Dave and other staff worked on kind of a conceptual plan for that park. And I believe it was going to be on the west side of Santa Fe right there.
That's correct. It's on the west side of Inka. south of Dartmouth.
Yeah, west side of Inka, east
in
side of
the open space native area. But beyond a concept, nothing else was done. There was never any funding to come up with an actual budget to put that park in. But we have figures from Canine Corral. Of course, they're years old now, but at least that's a starting point.
Well, yeah, but it's a little bit different. It was in a flooded area, I think. It had to have a knockdown fence and some things like that. There was quite a bit of things there, I think. I think that area that the Cushing areas is different, quite a bit different.
That will also be within the at least the 100-year floodplain, Jim, because you've got Little Dry Creek running right alongside it. So we'll be up against some of the same challenges.
Another question I have on Emerson, the little park across the street from the bigger park, is that something that could possibly work as an off-leash area?
It's too small. It's the size of a housing lot or less.
Okay.
But like, does that matter? I mean, I've seen really small dog parks in a lot of different housing communities and developments, and people I feel like are just so grateful to have one when they don't. So, I mean, I understand like size, you want to give people like enough space, but is there like a regulation or a restriction around that?
You know, I don't know that there's any regulation or restriction on the size of a dog park, but I think you also have to consider the neighbors over there. That small lot is backed up to 3 houses. And I'm not sure as a homeowner in that area, whether that's something that those people would be for. And maybe they are, I don't know. And that would be fine, but it just seems to me it's a little small.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So should the task force schedule a meeting for like next week and get these recommendations together so we can start moving forward? Would that be the next step, do you think? And also we lost Kathy, so the task force is technically just me and Mark.
Yeah.
If anyone else wants to join.
We need to recruit at least one more person.
At
I would
least
say.
one.
Christine was on it.
No, she was friends with Inglewood Parks.
No, it was Mark, Kate, and Kathy, and I was the staff liaison, and I would still be happy to volunteer as a staff liaison. We do have a number of new commission members, and maybe one of those individuals would be interested.
I mean, I'm happy to contribute. I don't know what the intent of it is or what the requirement of it is, but I'm happy to discuss and help write up plans if that's what's needed.
Yeah, we'll fill you in on everything. Don't worry.
Okay. But I guess what I'm more wondering is, do we, from Mark's perspective, do we need to have sort of an intended direction? Because I know there, when this first came about, 2 or 3 months ago, at least when that first came about, discussion when I was on it, there was a discussion of, do we want to keep them, do we want to keep hours limited? Like, do we need to get a more broad consensus as far as just like a thumbs up, thumbs down saying, okay, do we want to keep the ones we have? Yes or no? Do we want to keep the hours restrictions that we have? Yes or no? Do we want to explore putting one north of 285? Yes or no? And then would that drive the task force, or was all of that part of what Kate, you and Mark and Karen did last
think
time?
At this point, those kinds of things are, it's all sort of open to sorting out. But I think the objective should be for the commission to come to some consensus about kind of a bit of a long-range vision for how we're going to manage dog use in parks in the future, and then figure out how that might translate into some shorter-term, projects and rules reevaluation.
Keep in mind that this off-leash dog issue is larger than just Emerson Park.
Well, that's very
this entails all the off-leash parks, and it entails every other park out there. I mean, you can go to Hosanna. We get complaints at Bellevue, even though we've got a dog park there, of people who walk their dogs off leash daily. So I think this task force has probably got to be challenged with a broader solution than just what's going to happen to Emerson. Emerson is in the
to
mix.
interrupt you, I definitely do not think that we need a task force to focus on Emerson. We need the task force to focus on a vision for how dog use is managed in Inglewood Park generally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't think, Christina, I don't know how you're going to make it by July.
And we might not, but I think starting this task force and then providing council with an update of where we're at, that we do have a task force and they're going to need however many months you guys decide that you'll need. We'll give them that update so they know not to expect us in July. It might be August or September. Timing might align too, depending on what decisions are made. You know, if we do get that park ranger position, everything may start July 1st with implementing January 1st. Of 2021. And so timing wise, I think it's fine to take your time and get this as right as we can. We know we're going to be impacting a lot of people. And we know based off of feedback how people feel on all sides of this issue. So I appreciate everybody on the task force and trying to find those solutions. Ultimately, the task force will bring it back to everyone at the Parks and Rec Commission to get feedback and potentially even vote on which one you, or 2 or 3, you would like to propose to our city council. And then the decision would be made going forward what our off-leash program looks like.
Right.
It also needs to coincide with the budget preparation for 2021, because depending on the decisions that are made, there's probably going to be some financial implications.
Out of curiosity, is the budget, we're working on, Christina, you're working on the 2020 budget now or the 2021 budget?
2021.
Okay.
So that starts January 1st. So kind of the
you have to
sooner
have it
we know, the
submitted
better.
here in the next month or two, though?
We're starting that process. There's still a little time to go, but you know, if you meet for the first time and have something groundbreaking that it may cost some money, it'd be good to update Dave or I if Dave's on the task force, and you'll know. That way we can be sure to request it going forward, see if it's feasible.
Okay.
The budget has to be approved by city council by charter, and I believe it is sometime in October that they have to vote to approve it, so that there's another period, and I think I don't know if it's 30 days or 60 days, but it has to get approved so that everything gets put in place before 2021 comes around the corner. So probably October is the drop dead date.
Okay.
Yeah, and I, having been there, council will have made decisions prior to that. So it's really, certainly by September, I think, we better have whatever we're going to have if it involves dollars, much in the way of dollars. You know, another thing, just going back to Emerson, smaller picture again, that I really recommend sometime this summer that we have a community meeting over there with the people that live right on Emerson and are backed up at Clarkson. So, I mean, we're hearing from them. And
I'm not sure
I appreciate
I'm not sure we can get a community meeting with the COVID.
Yeah, Jim, that's gonna be our biggest challenge. We would have loved to have these be all public in-person meetings, obviously, to see everybody and hear everybody that wants to speak. But that's gonna be our challenge, I think, going forward. So as a task force, if there's more surveys or targeted surveys that we want to try to do, again, focus not just Emerson, but this is a full city issue, not just one park. So that's going to be kind of the focus of the task force, is what makes the most sense. But yeah, we can get creative on our public meetings. We can have more of these types of meetings. Even as a task force, we could get it set up to have more of a public forum But yeah, hopefully by July we could have a meeting out there and invite the community and get some face-to-face information, but we'll see. We'll have to play that by ear.
Okay. Are there any, so I see Charles has raised his hand again, and I think we need to move on to Romans Park, but are there any other questions from commissioners? And then we'll take Charles' last question and then move on.
I have a quick question. So
Yeah.
for the task force meeting, how is the best way to set it up? Because do we have to
Can we
do
use this Zoom platform?
We can, so can we use our own, or do we have Debbie set up, or what does it look like? I'm not quite sure.
We'll probably set it up through the city since it's a city-related task force.
Perfect.
And then run them that way. That'd probably be the easiest. So you're not having to use your own personal stuff. I know that can be a challenge.
That
And
sounds,
if-
I was gonna
Oh,
say,
sorry.
I'll email the task force after this meeting so we can find a date to meet next week, and then we'll let you guys know so you can set up the city.
Okay.
Is that,
If anyone else wants to be involved, maybe they let Dave know and Kate.
And if there are 3 or more members meeting, it's a public meeting.
right?
3 or
So
more
it needs,
commission members?
yeah.
Okay. That's good to understand.
And then it needs to be posted 24 hours in advance.
It makes it a little more complicated to meet in a more impromptu way. Okay, thank you.
I can excuse myself if I need to.
No, you're in now. You're in. You're stuck with us, man.
Okay, so let's take Charles' last question and then move on to Romans Park.
Yeah, sorry to keep interrupting all this stuff, but one comment I would like to make about Emerson Park, and I know this is an Inglewood city-wide issue and not just Emerson Park, but as far as Emerson Park goes, it's a really secluded park. There's not a lot of traffic. There would be no fences required, I don't think, to make it an off-leash park. So the cost of doing anything there would be minimal to none. I think it would probably only just be changing the signage. And the other thing is, how do you get on the task force? I mean, I would volunteer to be on the task force to make decisions and be a part of that whole thing. And I don't know how you do that or if that's even possible.
Anyone care to explain the rules? It's a first. I think it's first you get on the commission, and then when these commission task forces are created, then they're subsets of the commission. But anyone else have any of the kind of commission type rules to offer, Charles?
Yeah, he could be the president, the brand new president of Inglewood Unleashed.
That's right. But that won't be just about Emerson.
Yeah.
I have one quick question for Charles. Charles, I live about 6 blocks from Emerson. What is the time during the day when it is busiest there?
As far as I usually go in the afternoons, and I'm usually there from like 4:30 to maybe 5:30 for about an hour. A lot of people show up then. I don't go in the morning, so I don't have any knowledge of how many people use it then.
Okay. Because I walk over there routinely, but I'm usually on the weekends and I'm or like midday. So I will try to head over there during that time, and I'll see if I can socially distance and try to talk to some of the residents that are there and kind of report back to Mark and to Kate from there. Maybe once we get our first meeting, because it's not far from me.
That'd be great. And who is this? I'm sorry.
It's Steve Young.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, we could have any meetings over there with anybody. We tried to do that right before all this COVID stuff happened, and the weather kind of shot us down there. But
yeah, I don't want to make it super formal in case people get worried about it. But I will walk my very excitable 50-pound lab mix over there after work some of the days, and then I'll see if I can catch some people and kind of engage them from there.
I'm there every day and weekends too. So
okay,
yeah, great. Thank you.
I don't want to throw a wrench in this or prolong this conversation, because I think we actually have a moving forward point. But I would also mention that I heard from a citizen today who couldn't make the meeting that they don't go to the park because they're afraid for their safety or their child is afraid of dogs. So as we think about, as the subcommittee thinks about recommendations, people at the park is wonderful, but people who are afraid to be there because of dogs off leash aren't going to be at the park. So we need to think about engaging those people in different ways as well. That's all.
Great point.
Okay. So unless someone objects, I think we should move on to Romans Park.
Sorry, I had to get unmuted there. Just an update on Romans Park. We are starting the retaining wall replacement next Monday, and that is to be completed by mid-July, which then puts us right on schedule for the construction of Romans Park tennis courts and the playgrounds. So that's my update. I'm excited that that wall's going in. We've notified our neighbors to the south to make them aware of what was transpiring. And I'm hoping for a very successful construction season out of this. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
All right, if there's no more questions, then we'll move on to staff's choice, and I'll open up my participant list here and start at the top. Kate,
Yes.
I'm sorry, that was commissioner. So Dave.
Yeah, I'll continue on here. Because of the COVID virus, we were unable to have our Arbor Day tree sale back in April. So we have done an online notification and tree sale, which has been very underwhelming and I would call it not very successful. We had purchased 64 trees for sale for this year's Arbor Day, and so far we've only sold 9. We're going to have pickup days for this tree sale of this Saturday, Sunday, and Monday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. So we're hoping to sell a few more trees. So if you want a tree, give Adrian Torres a call and I can give you that number.
What kind of trees are they?
You would ask that, wouldn't you? I don't recall at this point. It's been so long ago since I've seen the varieties, but I can get that for you if you're interested, Jim.
Yeah, I'm interested if there's any fruit trees.
We didn't do fruit trees this year.
Okay, I'm not interested.
Okay, sorry about that. The volunteer flowers for our flower gardens and a good place for those is Romans. We have a large volunteer contingency out there. Those flowers arrive Monday so that the volunteers can get out and plant in their volunteer gardens throughout our park system. The contracted flowers at the interchange and various parks have all been planted. We've also completed a portion of the pollinator garden at the depot in conjunction with the Case Group. So that's taken place. Parks is also working on some outdoor restaurant seating for both the east and the west paseos in conjunction with the restaurants down there and giving them distancing and other alternatives to the indoor seating as well. So we're working with community development on that. And then, as Christina had already mentioned, Emerald Ash Borer has been confirmed in Fort Collins. So it's headed both north and south, unfortunately. I put together a management plan, which I did send to Christina. If anybody else is interested in viewing that on the commission, I will be happy to send you a copy. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Any questions for Dave?
Yes, I have them, or comments regarding Little Dry Creek, the trail through Hosanna. I mean, major work's been down there cleaning up alongside the actual creek on both sides of it. Are they gonna, what are they gonna do there, Dave? I mean,
That's Mile High Flood Control, formerly urban drainage. They manage streams and stretches along the river banks from the Platte River out both sides of that. And that was some planned I wouldn't say revegetation, but devegetation there. That's gotten extremely overgrown and thick, and urban drainage wanted that done or taken care of. So they've done that with some allocation of funds to the city of Inglewood.
So, okay. Well, there isn't any place for urban campers to sleep there anymore, that's for sure.
They can sleep under the stars.
Yeah. Yeah, but it really does look a lot better, especially where the bridge is, the pedestrian bridge. I mean, it really looks nice.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for Dave, or we can move to Christina?
Really my biggest update, kind of COVID related still and reopening, is our lifeguards are being trained. So we will be ready. Our seasonal employees have been hired across the board. And just a quick update on our library, just in case you use our library in Inglewood, it is reopened for curbside pickup only. So you can put holds on books, and then they have a cool little system that you can come pick up your books. So just so you know, we're not open fully to the public, but you can still get materials if you need them. That's all I've got.
Okay, thanks. Now we can move to Commissioner's Choice, unless anyone has a question for Christina about those things. If not, then we can go to Jim.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the books, Christina?
I don't know all the books in the library. The whole library, you can check it out. You can look online.
I'm kidding. But does somebody have a bird? I keep hearing the tweeting, and I'm trying to think, is that in my backyard going on, or is it?
Is that just you?
I thought maybe it was in the flowers behind Christina, but either that or Debbie. No, I don't have anything more.
Okay, then we can go to Kate.
I don't have anything.
Christine.
I don't have anything.
Gary.
Oh, nothing here, Mark.
Steven, got anything?
I'm good for now.
Same. So unless there's any last minute thoughts, we can adjourn the meeting.
See everybody later.
Great.
All right,
Thanks
all.
all.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take care.
Have a good evening.